maximizing your mobile ad revenues. To take us through that, we'll have the VP of Marketing and Ad Monetization at Kongregate. Please give a warm welcome to Jeff Gurian. Jeff, come take the stage.
Oh, this working? You can hear me? I have a lot of space. I could probably do a one-man panel, but I won't. I'm here to talk about ad mediation and how to maximize your ad revenue. Ad mediation is a necessary technology in this day and age if you have ads in your app or game. But the technology doesn't necessarily work the way it should, unfortunately. You'll be told it is. We found that's not the case. I'm here to tell you why. I'm from Kongregate. We are a gaming company. I'm the VP of Marketing. I have a direct marketing background of about 10 to 15 years and been doing ad monetization now for about 4 years. So a little bit about us, the company. Like I said, we're a gaming company. We originally started out as a PC gaming platform in 2006, kind of the YouTube for games. We have 100,000 games on the website. Most of them are crap. But there are some really good high-quality games on there. Out of 100,000, some will be good. We parlayed all the developer relationships we had from the web into mobile publishing that we started about 6 years ago. Some of our more popular mobile publishing titles are Animation Throwdown, which is a collectible card game that has Family Guy, Bob's Burgers, American Dad. Probably our most famous is an idle game called Adventure Capitalist, which started off the whole kind of idle money genre. Game plays itself, but for some reason it's addictive and popular. And we also are premium publishers. We do games on Steam and consoles, and we're also coming out with a PC gaming platform later this summer called Cartridge. This is a little bit about our ad revenue growth the past 4 years. So 4 years ago, ads were not a material part of our business on the mobile side. And then now it is 30%. That is through a lot of trial and error, working with development teams, convincing them that ads should be in the games that they do. And also a lot of trial and error and working with networks and doing different deals and playing with waterfalls and technology to maximize the ad revenue. So we do have a dedicated ad ops team that their main job is to make sure we're making as much money as we possibly can. We also now have ads pretty much in every title, from casual to hardcore. And we optimize those ad placements to make as much money as we can. I'll explain more about that later. And then most of our ad revenue does come from rewarded video. So that most of my examples in here, actually pretty much all, will be rewarded video related. We do have a little bit of interstitial revenue and are kind of looking to grow that out a little bit further. So I'll add some comments on that. So what is ad mediation? A lot of times you hear that term and you immediately think technology, the different providers, the different systems and tools. And in our industry, that's kind of what it is. But for us, it's actually more of a lifestyle. The heart of ad mediation is mediation, trying to figure out buying and selling and making the most money you possibly can through the buying and selling and mediation of different networks and demand sources. So we don't rely on technology. We rely on the lifestyle part, which is utilizing technology to help us kind of build and maximize from there. This is what I call option 0 for ad mediation, which is just putting in a single ad network SDK. Do you know who loves this model? That ad network. They have no competition. They get to set the rates that they see fit. The fill is at their discretion. They have no reason to bid more or less. This is not mediation, so I'm not going to talk about this again. So now on to mediation. So option 1 is SDK management. This is a form of ad mediation. It's a very rudimentary form of ad mediation. Basically going to the different networks that you want to work with, and a lot of these are mobile gaming specific, but different networks, DSPs, demand sources, putting their SDKs within your app and then managing them accordingly. Again, I say this is very rudimentary because you lose out on a lot of control that you have with moving these networks around. In fact, if you want to move things around, either you need an interface to do that, usually built out by an engineer. You need an engineer to help support moving things around, or you need to be able to code yourself and be able to move things around on your side, usually on a server-to-server basis. It does create demand and competition, but it's not an ideal form of demand and competition. There are companies I know who do this. I do not recommend anybody do this. Option 2, third-party mediation networks. Third-party are independent platforms that have created a mediation system. A lot of tools, bells and whistles to help you do whatever you want with your ads, both from managed placements to running house ads to consolidating reporting into one interface. These are independent. That's why I call them third parties. They all have different fee structures, so either they take a % of the ad revenue or they take a % of impressions. Taking a % of impressions is a fancy way to say we're taking a % of your ad revenue, though. So either way, they're taking revenue. We've not used any of these providers, so I can't recommend any of them, or I can't say anything negative about them. If you're looking to give up ad revenue as part of their fee structure, and you're making a lot in ad revenue, these fees can be pretty high and pretty steep on a monthly basis. So you have to kind of determine if the service they're providing is consumer with the value you're getting. So it's something you have to do your research and homework on. They'll all say that they have the best systems and algorithms, but that's all companies say that, so take it out with a grain of salt. Oops. Option 3 is first-party mediation. First-party being that these are mediators, but they're also demand sources. So IronSource, MoPub, Fiber, they all have their demand networks. Why did they create mediation platforms? Well, a couple reasons. First of all, it gives them insights into everything that their competitors are doing. They get to see what they're bidding, they get to see how much revenue they're generating, what their CPMs are on a geo-by-geo basis. Great for them. Secondly, it gets their demand in your game. A lot of times while you can move these first-party sources around, you cannot exclude them or drop them. So they always be there and always have a chance to get some inventory. So they get the twofold benefit. They do, functionality-wise, a lot of the same things as the third-party systems in terms of managing multiple SDKs from different ad networks, consolidating reporting, and offering other tools and things you might need to run an ad stack. One thing to be careful of and watch out for is because these networks are the mediators, there's also a chance for conflict of interest. These networks are both servicing customers on the buy side and the sell side. They also have their underlying tech in the game. So a lot of times if there's an issue with ads or ad serving, they default to themselves, which makes sense. I don't know how prevalent this is, but a number of years ago, we actually saw cases where one of the first-party systems we were using, one of the network mediation providers, was actually taking more impressions than they should have, despite lower CPMs. We called them out on it. That day, that stopped. We asked them what happened. They said other networks were passing and not filling in their impressions. We talked to those networks. They said that was not the case. They were never getting the calls in the first place. To me, that's stealing and fraud. Again, this was a few years ago, so I don't know if it's still happening, but it's something you need to watch out for, which is why you want to leverage technology in these systems, but you don't want to just let them go and walk away from them. So in terms of feature sets, they all offer something different. The SDK management does create the competitive marketplace, but I don't think a very good one. So again, I wouldn't recommend it, but so do first-party and third-party mediation. Automated management in terms of moving bids around or moving partners around or demand sources. They offer that through the mediation systems. Again, another reason not to use SDK management because now you're relying on yourself or an engineer to do that. Additional features, which I'll get into in a sec, but both available through mediation providers. The network bias, kind of what I said before, defaulting to themselves, taking impressions when they shouldn't. That's something you'll have to watch out for with first party, maybe not so much with third. And then cost fees, usually first party can be cheaper or can have costs and fees, but usually much cheaper compared to third party systems. So what are the additional feature sets that you might need? Well, house ads is one. So if you want to promote another app, you want to promote another initiative that you're working on. If you have a direct sales team and they're out selling your inventory to different buyers, you could run those ads and slot them where you wanted to within your mediation stack. Another one is APIs. So it's nice to be able to do an API that connects into your mediation source or single source and pull out everything you need, everything from revenue to impressions to anything you want to look at from an ad side. It's nice to be able to plug into one source and get that information. Now you can do this with the individual networks, but then you have to maintain individual APIs with all those different networks. Is it doable? Yes. Is it labor intensive? Yes. So again, why not just plug into one source, get everything you need, go from there. Zones, which is a fairly new concept, but this is the ability to do, this can be divided into a couple different things. So first one is the ability to call a network, call a secondary network, and then recall the first network again. Up until a couple years ago, or a couple months ago, this was not really possible. A lot of mediation systems now put this in. The other element you can do with zones is basically have one ad and network stack for one ad placement and a whole separate ad and network stack for a secondary ad placement, and manage those separately if you want. We've started to play around with that with some results. Kind of varies by title, but it's an option you have. You can also just obviously take all your ad placements, pool them together, and just treat all your inventory the same. And then Moat. We've been hearing now for the past 3 years that the brands are coming, the brand spend dollars are coming, and they want Moat, and they want viewability tracking. Not sure why that's needed. Rewarded video gets especially on mobile, because the view rates are pretty high. Rewarded video gets an average view rate of around, for us, 96, 97%. Interstitials obviously can be skipped at a certain, interstitial videos can be skipped at a certain point, and then interstitial banners, again, 100% viewability, because usually on a mobile device within an app, there's usually one of those on the phone. If you're talking mobile web, obviously you're going to get the differences there. But the brands want Moat, so the mediation partners have put those in, along with other technology and tools, and basically help you manage things more efficiently. So that's just a little bit about the ad management side, and that's one piece of the puzzle. To do ads right, you need, in my opinion, you need both the technology side, which for us, the mediators provide that, but then the other side is your ad inventory and what you have available to offer to both users and ad networks to sell, because that dictates really how much revenue. So this kind of gets into the how to maximize your revenue further once you have a mediation source. So we have a different philosophy for how to build ads into our apps, and again, they're mostly games, and we're talking about rewarded video here. But they need to be designed, the game needs to be designed with ads in mind. Where are the best places for ads to go? How big can that icon be? Where can it be found easily by users? This is something that should be, it's very hard to design a game and then build the ads in around it later. So this should be part of the design and thinking process earlier on. They need to be meaningful. You want people, especially for rewarded video, you want people to engage, you want people to engage again. So whatever you're rewarding them with needs to be good. We generally have some rules around that. We do our rewarded video, our rewards are based on boosts and timers or timer reductions. One thing we do not do is currency. If you do currency, people will just watch ads in repetition just to get the currency. Because ads value decrease as people watch more. And if you're still giving away currency, that is a fixed rate, you're actually devaluing your currency. So I wouldn't recommend tying currency to that, but some companies do. And but I can't speak to the success they've had with that or not. So we design it mostly around, like I said, boosts and reductions. But they're popular, and we also allow people sometimes watch more than one ad. They can stack their boost. Watch one ad to get a 2-hour boost, 2 ads to get a 4-hour boost, up to 5 or 6 per session. And then they're varied as well. So we want multiple placements of our ads. We want to have different rewards, and then variable ad types. So when I said earlier we're playing around more with interstitials, part of that is to identify the users who are not engaging with ads or rewarded video placements, that are not buying IAP. Those users in our game, they're playing for free, they're having fun, but they're not generating any value to us besides helping to boost our DAU numbers. DAUs are a good number to have, but at the end of the day, we kind of need some revenue to pay for people and offices. So we're introducing a system where we build interstitial videos and show them to people that aren't buying IAP or not watching rewarded video ads. And we're doing so in terms of how it's built. You obviously don't want to do that on session 1. You're going to turn people off. So we are building it, depending on the game, either after a certain number of sessions, say 10, or after a certain number of days, say 3 or 7. That way, they're kind of hooked and committed to the game, and the chances that they see the ad and then leave are much lower. And we have seen these ads hurt retention, but usually by about 1 or 2%. And again, these are the 1 or 2% leaving or not monetizing in any way, so is really losing 1 or 2% a huge loss. There's some ASO considerations, but 1 or 2% to us is acceptable, especially for the revenue trade-off. Cool. Now your key metrics that you want to look at. So fill rate. How many ads are being filled that you have available are actually being filled. There's no reason, if you're using mediation, there's no reason this should not be 99% plus. You should also, if you have the ability to run house ads as backfill, the way we view it is that there should always be an ad available, even if we don't get paid for it. At least they're watching a house ad. Impressions, the number of ad views. If you have 1 impression to offer, your fill rate's going to be 100%. That's easy to do. You have enough networks with enough demand to fill an ad. But what you want, if, for those of you who like John Oliver, saw them recently where he said 10 is greater than 0. You obviously make more money serving 10 ads than you would serving 0 or 1 ad. So we look for number of ad views, and I'll dive into that a little bit in a minute. And then we look at the eCPM, which we all know, the cost per 1,000 impressions. And then we have our own metric called the ARPDAU. I'll actually debate on how to say that properly, but which is basically of the people engaging with ads, how much money per user are we actually making based on the fill and the CPM. You can also look at ad revenue ARPDAU, but that tends to be diluted because you have a lot depending on how many people are in the game. So we actually find this to be a more concise metric because it's just isolating to the people who are actually engaging with ads and what we're making from them. So get your fill. And talking about the fill rate, this is what it would look like basically if you put in a single SDK. They don't have unlimited inventory. They don't have unlimited supply. There's a lot of inventory out there. But sometimes they just don't have enough inventory to fill your impressions, in which case you see fill rates in the 40 to 50% range. Obviously not good, because that means you're not making money on the rest of the impressions you're giving. This is actually the fill rates for one of our games, so again, consistently over 99%. And just to reiterate, if you're using mediation, you should be having enough ad network SDKs in that stack that there's no reason you should be having a 99% plus fill rate. For anybody who does do ads, I'd go back and look. If you're in the 70s or 80s, something is wrong. You should fix that ASAP. The next component is the impression side, so having enough of them. So we look at 2 things, and we optimize our games to these two metrics. So first of all, it's a % of DAU engaging with ads. This can vary by title. So in a casual game, we can see as few as 50% engagement rate in the low side. Sometimes we see as high as 80%. So that means 80% of all users playing the game are looking at at least 1 ad per day. We optimize this metric. If it's too low, we put in more ad placements, or we try to change the reward we're giving out for rewarded video to try to increase this. Hardcore games, because just of their nature, the engagement rate tends to be lower, but still, even with them, we're aiming for between 30 and 50% ad engagement. And then the next component to that is the number of impressions you have per day. Just back to my example earlier, if you have the 1 impression, yeah, you'll get filled, no problem, but we want numerous impressions. We want to create a marketplace. We want to show enough ads that we make as much money as possible. Now, we generally try to cap this out. We don't usually let users watch more than 10, just because the ad value goes down so dramatically the further you go into, the more ad views people do. So we optimize this as well. If we see people watching 10, 12 ads, we'll cut back the number of ad units they can engage with, or the number of ads they can watch consecutively. So we try to aim for this sweet spot anywhere between 5 to 10. And again, this is something during test markets we actively optimize towards. So this is where the CPM comes into play. And this is an example of when we first got started in the mobile ad space in earnest. Someone came to us and offered us a $50 CPM, and I was like, wow, that's pretty incredible. Let's take it. And they basically gave it to us for 1 impression. But they wanted first impression fill at a $50 CPM. Thought that was amazing. We backed that out into our ad average revenue per daily engaged user, the ad ARPDAU metric. That's 5 cents a view. That's pretty awesome. So then I go into the platform 2 days later, and I go, why are my CPMs $12? Well, A, it's $50 in US only, so that was one component. But B, it was $50 for the option to do first fill, but they weren't filling 100% of first fill. So of all the first fill impressions they could do, they were only filling 80%. So again, they were taking a haircut. They were picking and choosing users. And then also the subsequent impressions were devalued to a point where it dragged down the aggregate CPM. So I might be getting $50 for that one impression. My second impression was worth 12. My third one was worth 8. Fourth one was worth 4, and it went down from there. So blended, the CPM was $12, not the $50 I went like celebrating and thinking I was a ads genius with. But this is where kind of all these kind of metrics come together. Is that when you look at fill and CPMs, you're actually better off with lower CPMs at higher fill. You'll actually make more money per user. Simple math, but this is how we evaluate our ad deals, basically. So we're not always looking to maximize our CPMs. We're looking to maximize our daily revenue per engaged user. So we like to say that CPMs are sexy, because they are, but it's really fill is what pays the bills. So good fill at good CPMs is what you want. Then we have the mediation problem. For those of you who have ever used a mediation platform or looked at a bidding system, this probably looks very familiar. I tend to have a little bit of a conspiracy theory about this, which is, as you can see, the networks that are bidding here, they're in a very tight range. Sometimes they leapfrog one another, but not by a dramatic amount. The reason why is, my belief, in this kind of marketplace, there's no real incentive to bid more. If you're getting the impressions you want for $10, and you want to see maybe what my higher bid would do, you take your bid to $10.10 or $10.25. You don't have to go from 10 to 14, or 14 to 20. So these systems are bidding up inventory or changing their bids more incrementality-wise than they are kind of leaps ahead. So you can make money this way. This is not a bad thing, but it's not necessarily ideal, and you're not going to see huge fluctuations unless there's a huge fluctuation in the market, which has happened with playable ads, but those events are more infrequent than frequent. So when we had this kind of stack going, there was this guy. So one of two things are happening here. Either that top blue line, either that network's algorithm is completely stupid, and they are bidding an absurd amount more than they have to, which is not the case. Most of the bidding algorithms are not stupid, and they're also, as we can all suspect, designed to make the networks money, so they're never going to lose money. What this up top here is a deal that we have with the network. So instead of letting them bid on a per impression basis, which is right now the current construct in mediation, first impressions worth a certain amount, seconds worth a certain amount, networks bid per, we tied them all together into deals. So what we're offering up is to say, instead of valuing our impressions, we want you to value our inventory. And if you want our inventory, if you want access to consistent inventory, you need to provide, first, a good CPM, and second, a good fill. And we hold networks to that fill number. If you do those kind of deals and you have a deal in place with fill, you have to watch that. So a lot of times we'll have a deal in place where we say the network is filling, say just my prior example, $15 CPM at 4 impressions. We'll log in and run the numbers and make sure they are filling 4 impressions. If we even find a lot of cases where sometimes they pass for whatever reason or they don't serve, and they're only filling 3.6 impressions per user. Well, that's not their end of the deal. Our deal was 4, and we make them make good on that secondary part. In the current ecosystem, networks can pass on any impression they want for any reason they want, and they do. So instead of us doing these kind of per impression, letting algorithms bid per impression, we bundle our inventory together and value that more so than the impression. Let's kind of keep in mind it's kind of a weird system where a lot of times the people with the supply don't know the value of the supply. You wouldn't sell your house without first understanding the value of the house. You wouldn't have an open house and just come in and let buyers tell you what they wanted to pay. That never works out. But that is the current ad landscape we live in. So I encourage everybody who's running ads or looking at ads, know what your ads are worth. Talk to people, try to do deals, talk to networks to figure out where they can bid, use floors, but figure out what your ads are worth. It can vary title by title, but you should have a pretty good idea, because then and only then you're going to know what to sell it for. So this is an inefficient market right here still. This should not exist, but it does. So I don't have to look at this slide, so I just get to go on a little rant for like a couple minutes. So real-time bidding, header bidding, flattened waterfalls, whatever you want to call it. Everybody's saying that's kind of the new buzzword in the ads world. And is it good? Yes. with a big caveat. So a lot of people, it's had a bigger impact on the interstitial and banner world than it has on rewarded video so far. We've seen and heard people talking about they've seen CPMs go up by as much as 30%. It does create a better bidding system, and that's why the CPMs have gone up. But take a pessimistic view at it. Who was making that 30% 2-3 years ago? Probably was not us, since we didn't see those in our reflected CPMs. Who was making that? Our friends at the ad networks were. So basically, we've all been getting screwed to the tune of 20 to 30% for the past few years. It's nice there's technology now that's helping to level the playing fields. But there's still a lot of guesswork behind this technology, especially in gaming, where a lot of the buy side is happening on a cost per install basis, and that's being backed into a CPM. So before you had two problems, which is the mediator trying to figure out what the CPM should be and trying to predict that from each network, but also the network trying to figure out what their CPM should be. So you had two people guessing. The real-time bidding eliminates at least the mediator from guessing, because now all the networks have to bid in real time. But the networks are still trying to guess and figure out what their effective CPMs are going to be on the CPI buys that are happening on their side. So why I think it's a step in the right direction. I think it has some evolution to do as well. One of the big limitations is, just like the waterfall example I showed, is it values impressions, single impressions. First impression, second impression, third impression are all treated differently, which, in our experience, the value of the inventory is greater than that of a single impression. And that's how we go about optimizing and approaching our inventory. Letting networks value your impression, perfectly fine. You'll make money that way, don't get me wrong. Will you make more money by valuing your inventory? So far, yes. And unfortunately, we've yet to see the technology catch up to that. Where it possibly could, maybe in the future, is header bidding, real-time bidding on pools of inventory. So again, impressions 1 through 4 versus impression 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So letting networks be a little bit more aggressive in terms of buying swaths of inventory instead of, again, individual impressions. So in closing, your mediation stack, do your homework. Find a solution that meets your needs. Make sure you evaluate the cost, what the costs look like now, but also what the cost could look like as you grow. Make sure they have all the bells and whistles you're looking for in terms of functionality for house ads, different mediation providers, APIs, all that stuff. So definitely don't just pick one. Spend some time talking to them all. You'll want to, you'll be a little bit sick by the end of it and dizzy. They'll all say the same pitch, but there's nuances between them, just like any platform or any buy decision you have to make. Fill rate, you want to have multiple networks in your stack, and again, you want to aim for that 99% plus range. If you're below that, again, something's probably off. Have enough impressions to create demand for your supply. If you have one impression and someone values that impression, a media buyer, there's no reason to bid that up, because if they bid up that one impression, they're not going to get anything more from it. So they're going to drop their bids back down. So if you have one impression, you kind of cap out your value. So we aim for multiple impressions. And then CPMs and your ARPDAO, just keep an eye on those. Watch what the networks are doing, watch how much fill they're taking, watch what they're paying you, and evaluate the deals. If you're talking about deals, evaluate them based on maximizing your aggregate revenue, not just maximizing one metric like CPM, which does not maximize your revenue. That's my slides. We do at Kongregate offer a service where we consult and help companies manage ads. If you have any questions on anything I've talked about or interested in that service, you can reach myself and the ad ops team at mobileads@kongregate.com. And then we also post some stuff to social media, mostly about gaming, but every now and then about ads as well. So I think we have under a minute for like a question, or we can call it. I can't drop this mic because it's attached, but I thank you for your time.